Okay, we're back here with the same op-amp, and now I have two 100 ohm resistors, which is a 50 ohm load on my output of my op-amp, so I'm really heavily loading it. My tantalum capacitor is keeping it stable, but if we look at what happens on the output as we crank up my input, right now I have 100 millivolt input, and I've set the scales on my display to 100 millivolts per division on the input and 1 volt per division on the output, and actually it turns out they're both about the same size, showing my gain close to 10. And now I'm going to start cranking up my input, and we see clipping. And the clipping looks a little weird, and this is pretty typical of current clipping. Basically, the op-amp does not have enough current drive to drive the output at this point, and the clipping voltage is quite low. If we look at output 2, it's 3.19 volts, and if we look at our input, select input 1, and we're going to go to amplitude and measure it. It's 0.78. So let's go back and let's make sure we can see both input and output. Amplitude. There we go. And we'll see that as we turn it down, the output amplitude is not changing until we get below the clipping range. Now, to see that this clipping is indeed due to the current limiting of the op-amp, let's take our load off. So go down here and we'll pull off one resistor. I'm using a needle nose plier to do it. Makes it a little easier. And look, it jumped up quite a bit. We still have a limit, but it's quite a bit higher. And if I pull off the other resistor, pulled them both off. Now our clipping is much higher. I have to actually turn down the scale on the output to see the clipping, and we can see it's getting to an amplitude of 7.8, nearly 8 volts, which my power supply is currently 5 volts. So I'm getting, not all of the 10 volts that's available, but I'm getting close. But not much more than the only 3 volts I was getting when I was current limited. So we're going to have to talk about how we could drive more current out of this op-amp if we want to drive a 50 ohm load, or God forbid an 8 ohm load like a speaker.